Dr. Simmons, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Anthony. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, thank you.
All right. So I've been working with you for a while now, and I'm curious myself. How did you get into this space in the first place? In terms of functional medicine, do you have your own hero's journey when it comes to your health? Like, how did this all start for you?
So I went to school at Central Michigan University. I got an undergraduate in health sciences. It's kind of like just a landing program. You don't really go anywhere from there unless it's the next step. So from there, I became a chiropractor. I was a practicing chiropractor for a couple of years and just kind of found it wasn't a really great fit for me.
Okay.
Fortunately, as I was going through chiropractic school, I had a really great instructor, David Seaman. He was like a researcher and did a lot of articles, reviews, and so on, and kind of really started to poke holes in chiropractic as far as being the be all end all. Did a lot of nutrition and talking about how omega 3s are more anti-inflammatory and the way we eat really influences our pain syndromes a lot more so than anyone really understood. His point was you can't just adjust someone who's eating kind of crap all the time and expect them to feel better for more than just a moment in time. And after chiropractic for a couple of years and dealing with a lot of people with arthritis that just weren't getting really any better because they weren't changing things aside from just getting adjusted randomly. Putting a force into someone's body for
Yeah.
an instant 4 times a week tops isn't going to really change their stars. Just found it wasn't very rewarding. So ended up hooking up with Dr. Shields over here at Integrative Wellness Centers, and he kind of took me through what he was doing in the way of functional medicine. It really kind of cogged in with a lot of what I learned and a lot of just my personal experience with being active, being just healthy as I possibly could be, and just seemed to be a much better fit for me, for sure. I guess my personal experience that lends itself towards this is I have psoriasis. Didn't really understand it going through and never had to explain going through college and so on when it started to manifest itself. But eating through 3 foot by 3 foot boxes of ramen noodles and drinking way more beer than I should have probably didn't help that very much. But I found, personally that if I avoid certain foods, stay away from triggers, keep my body healthy, I can keep that autoimmune condition under control. Not as easy for many people as it is for me, but it's definitely something that I know would have had a very detrimental effect on my life. Look at my grandmother; she's got severe rheumatoid arthritis and pain every day, and I feel very strongly that would have been me had I not been doing and not been doing the things that I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. The thing with chiropractic, like you said, it has some value, of course, but like there's a lot more to health than just that. It's more for the
There's a lot
gut.
more to it. Yeah, for some people, it's incredible. Myself included. I have herniated discs, so I still get adjusted, but just kind of the clientele group that I inherited with my first business was just all elderly patients that just weren't really getting it and not making changes. So it was daunting. Not rewarding. I guess was probably the biggest issue.
Yeah, it makes sense. So let's get into what you're doing now, which is functional integrative medicine. First of all, can you describe what integrative medicine, the umbrella term, is for people?
Integrative medicine is, it takes on different terms depending on who you're talking to, right? There are a lot of medical doctors that are doing what they would call integrative medicine now. So for many, it's using pharmaceuticals along with vitamins, minerals, dietary intervention, supplementation to try to integrate as many different practices and modalities into one's healthcare as you can. So for us, we don't use any pharmaceuticals. We use all botanicals, herbs, natural components that help to maximize people's health and capabilities in the way of healing. We do blood testing in large part for every patient that comes through the door. And then based on that array of blood testing, we're assessing inflammation levels, thyroid, blood sugar regulation, insulin, vitamin D. Just wherever there may be lacking shortcomings in the way of someone's nutritional profile. And then based on our conversations with them, whatever their particular ailments may be, whether they're digestive in nature or thyroid or hormone related, we try to home in on what may be the most used for them as individuals, and then do everything that we possibly can in the way of dietary intervention, supplementation. Lots of times it's going to be lifestyle modification and so on, whether it's exercise or just changing the way one's eating, and just try to get them to feel as well as we possibly can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, because a lot of people are caught up in the conventional model. They're not necessarily seeing resolve of their own disease. They may see some symptom relief. And of
Mhm.
course, I know you know that it has some value. There's some things like drugs and surgery have their place in some cases. But yeah, just like what are people not getting in that model? Like, what do they not know when it comes to what's possible for their health if they're just on this roller coaster of drugs? Um, they're just kind of in the fog and not knowing what to do next.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I mean, people aren't really taught, and I don't know if it's through doctors not wanting to teach them or people not being willing to be students. I think a lot of people are upset when I talk with them and tell them, hey, if you have omega-3s, it helps with your cholesterol, and if you exercise, it'll bring up your good cholesterol. We don't have to have statins for every single high cholesterol issue. Um, I think on the other side of that coin, a lot of people aren't willing to do what they would need to do anyway. So, I mean, I do believe that I'm in a unique situation where people come to our office looking to work around the need for medication. I mean, you have to have a willing client, a willing patient base, someone that wants to make changes all day, every day. Because I think the reason the medical model continues to spin is because a lot of people don't want to do what they need to do to get better. I mean, diabetes is completely preventable, and yet a lot of people are still diabetic. I mean, people know what they need to do; they just don't all do it. I do believe that there are many that are told that they have no means of changing things, whether it's high cholesterol, many people with anemia, vitamin mineral deficiencies, digestive ailments. I mean, I think the medical model just fall short in a lot of areas, but I don't think they're to be villainized either. And because I do believe it's the American model in large part. I mean, we don't do what we need to do to be healthy in a lot of cases. So um, I don't know. I guess the one area where I would say that I think the medical model falls shortest is chronic digestive ailments. That's a big one where I just see so many people that go everywhere they possibly can and do everything they can possibly think of to try to identify why their problems are what they are, whether it's chronic bloating or constipation, loose bowel movements, and it just seems like there aren't really good resources for those types of patients. That's when you get like microbiome dysbiosis, unbalanced in the way of bacteria. I mean, they're really good at identifying pathology. If you have cancer, you want to go to a gastro, not to me. But if your stomach hurts every time you eat, there's not really much to be done for it, unfortunately. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the area medical model right now, from the way I see it, is falling the shortest, is in the way of just digestive treatment, diagnostics, and so on. And that's huge. I mean, so many patients have chronic digestive ailments, and so much of our health, including psychological health, really depends on that. And that's a big area where I think we're missing the ball for a
that
lot of
makes
people.
sense. Uh, I'm curious. Do you want to talk about the Flexner report and how like conventional system kind of started and kind of how it got so popular, even though like people aren't really seeing results?
Talk about what? I'm sorry.
The Flexner report.
Election report?
The Flexner report. You know about that? How
Yeah.
like? Want to talk about that a little bit?
I don't know anything about it. I don't know that I would
Oh,
be.
that's all right. That's all right. So basically, in the early 1900s, we had like kind of a flip flop in terms of popularity with conventional medicine and quote alternative medicine. Like holistic medicine was really like the majority of the thing, and as we see now, like allopathic, that was a minority. That was like it was kind of used how it should have been used, like surgeries and drugs. That were like people would go to them when they actually needed them. But then something kind of changed. This is like when research was being done on certain chemical compounds like vitamins, minerals, kind of like petroleum-based medicine, right? And John D. Rockefeller at the time kind of saw this as an opportunity to monopolize allopathic medicine today. So what he did is he kind of basically shut down all of these alternative schools, as well as chiropractic, um, herbalism, whatever, because he had this guy named Abraham Flexner. He had go around all these medical schools and basically write a report on it. And it was intentionally to discredit all these alternative therapies. And he then went on to spend about $100 million to basically convince the doctors at the time that like drugs and surgery are the way. And that basically led to everything being monopolized in terms of the schooling and the education, just people's minds. And it's kind of how it got flip-flopped. And that's why basically medical doctors, even though they're well-meaning, they get into the space with like wanting to help other people and things like that. What we see is like they know next to nothing about how to heal the body with nutrition, exercise, things that actually our genes require of us. And that's kind of where we're at today. It all started like with Abraham Flexner and Johnny Rockefeller.
I can't really speak to it. It's not really a concept that I was aware of. So, no.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Right.
So let's get into some of the pillars of functional medicine. Let's start with nutrition. Like, what are some of the things that some people generally should be avoiding? Like, they're just kind of destroying their health overall. Like, simplify it because there's a lot of confusion. Like, what should we be avoiding when it comes to nutrition?
So I think good question. So this is a troublesome topic to really bring up because you can't really enact upon it. But I think one of the most important issues that we have as a society in the way of our diet and our nutrition are the types of fats that we eat. I mean, there's that misconception that fat is bad for us and saturated fat is worse. And very few people understand what omega-3 fats or omega-6 fats are. And that's really in my opinion, most important piece of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
There are essential fatty acids, ones that we can't make. And we can't make omega-3 fats. We can't make omega-6 fats. So we have to get those from food. Unfortunately, in the food industry, processed food, it's much cheaper to have canola, soybean, and or safflower oil or other omega-6 fat sources. And those are extremely inflammatory. They enhance pain syndromes. They cause clotting. They cause immune overreactivity. And you need that at times. You need the immune system to react when you're sick. You need a leg to hurt if it's broken so that you don't walk upon it. But we also need to resolve those mediators. And that's where omega-3s come in. And we're just lacking in the way of our dietary access to those types of fats, primarily because they're so abundant in the food industry. Also, the animals that we eat are primarily fed grains, which are omega-6 fats, of source of fats, and not fed what they should be eating. I.e., salmon should be in the oceans and the streams and be getting algae essentially as their food source. So they have omega-3 fats in them. That gives them the salmon color. When they're fed grains in a farm, farming industry, their fats are not there anymore. They're not the same types of fat. So they actually stain salmon, the color salmon, to enhance it.
Yeah, aren't they like gray without the color?
Without it, yeah, I mean they cook
Yeah.
to a white for sure, but you'll walk like right on the fat, you'll see this little stain that they put in there because it's like their fats aren't what they're supposed to be. So we're lacking a lot of our good sources of those because it's cheaper to use grains for most everything, and that's a complex topic to bring up because it's not on a food label. You can't look on the back of the label and see how much omega-3 and how much omega-6 fat is in something. You just have to have developed an intuition that's extremely hard to get through to people. But I think that is a huge piece of the U.S. population's pain syndrome, excessive inflammation. I mean, we talk about Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, arthritis, tendonitis, bursitis, depression. They all have links in the way of inflammation and excessive swelling and burden upon the body. So that's a huge piece. It's a little bit more difficult to enact upon because I don't think a lot of people have access to sources to explain to them how much omega-3 fats or omega-6 fats they have. I guess the most actionable step is taking a well-researched fish oil on a daily basis for everyone, because that at least helps to stack the deck in your favor. I think another huge misconception that many people have is that grains, rice, oats, wheat, bread, pasta are healthy sources of food for us when they are actually more fattening and disease promoting than anything else. And it's not to say that all carbs are bad, because when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you're saying, well, vegetables are bad and all, lentils are bad and legumes and fruits are bad, and those are going to be primarily carb sources of energy. But excessive grains is the root of a lot of people's issues, whether it's from being overweight or diabetic. High carbohydrate, high grain diets are to blame for a lot of people's problems. So I think that's another misnomer, is that, and I hear it all the time with diabetics that are going to classes and being told what to eat. It's like, hey, eat oatmeal for breakfast. It's like, you have a disease that is quantified by having too much glucose in your blood, and you're eating a bowl of glucose. I don't think also people understand that sugar and carbohydrates or grains and fibers are all related. That's something that we don't get taught. I mean, we don't quite understand the chemistry of that. That's an important piece that I try to get through with every one of my patients. So yeah, those are, I think, the big ones. Fats and carbs both have a lot to do with I think a lot of people's ailments, issues, health wise.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is like not to be afraid of fat, but we really want the right types of fat. So like avoid the vegetable oils like corn, canola, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, soybean, and really focus on things like avocados, grass-fed meat, coconut oil, things like that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I would say, there are several land-based omega-3 sources. Chia seed oil, flax seed oil are really good options. You're starting to see avocado oil in the industrial, like processed foods, like you can find corn chips with avocado oil. I mean, you can still eat foods that aren't great for us, but they're better options. Potato chips, they have avocado, olive, or coconut. So, I mean, it seems like people have been voting with their dollars, and it's starting to change, but those that are left behind are still stuck with those fried oils.
Yeah. And you're talking about like the grains, in terms of like weight gain. Would that be because the hormonal impact that food has on your body, like being a high?
Yeah, grains and carbohydrates in particular have the greatest effect on insulin. And insulin,
Yeah.
it's a growth hormone. I mean, it stimulates the storage of energy. And carbohydrates, whether it's coming from sugar or from fruit or from rice, they absorb very, very quickly, very, very well. And your body doesn't want to lose any energy that it gets. I mean, if you think of it from a survivalistic standpoint, you don't want to lose any macros, whether they're fats, proteins, or carbs. But when those grains absorb so quickly, especially processed, thinking like breads, pastas, I mean, those are broken down to absorb even faster than like an oat would if you're having oatmeal. When they absorb really quick, you can't use all that energy on the fly. I mean, it's a lot of energy that hits your system all at once. So your response is release insulin. Insulin stores that for tomorrow when you might not have enough energy. Well, the problem is when that consistently happens, all of our tissues get saturated with energy, with carbohydrates oftentimes, or glucose. So it's like fat tissues get larger. The liver gets packed with glucose. At some point, it starts to have fat. And then at some point, glucose can start to rise in the bloodstream, and that really causes a lot of damage, lots of damage. When you talk to a diabetic, I mean, it's got a windfall thereafter. So, yeah, grains are very much to blame for that, I think, in many people's cases. Obviously, type 1 diabetes, if the pancreas just stops functioning, that's a bit of a different story. But the vast, vast majority of Americans with diabetes or type 2 diabetes, what used to be called adult onset, but they stopped saying that. So many kids are developing it, which is crazy. But I think it just speaks to the amount of grains that we're giving kids. I mean, go look at an elementary school lunch table. It's like, I don't know that you would really call much that is on that plate food, but that's how we get started off.
Yeah, I agree. So, like, I know the data shows like upwards of 90% of physician-related visits today are for stress-related illnesses, and we just have like so much stress throughout the environment, whether it's environmental toxins, work stress, lack of quality nutrition. Like, I always bring up the concept of a stress load, because we tend to like put stress in this bucket of like maybe work stress or something like that. we don't take in everything into account, whether it's mental stress, financial stress, and we just have a lot of things that are kind of holding us down, so to speak. Um, I'd like to talk about briefly hormetic stressors, things that we can do like strengthen the body, whether it's heat, cold, fasting, to basically be more resilient to our environment so we're not feel so bogged down. That makes sense?
It does.
All right.
It's not a therapy that I use a whole lot of, so I don't know that I would be the one to carry that conversation.
That's all right. But like, would you want to talk about like cold or heat or anything like that, or would you be able to talk about that?
It's not like a specialty of mine, so I don't know that I would really want to dive into that a whole lot.
All right. Makes sense. How about like some stress relieving practices? Like, is that something would you like want to dive into, like meditation, like forest bathing, like things like that? Anything? Are you able to talk about that?
I mean, I do discuss the concept of stress relief with most, if not all of my patients. I don't know that I really want to dive into that a whole lot either, though, to be honest.
Okay, makes sense. We'll just edit that part out. No worries.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sleep, because I know that's a very important, like overall health. We know talk about nutrition, and but I want people to understand like health is not just one thing, right? Like it's very fluid, very multifaceted. Like another foundational pillar would be sleep. Like what are some things that you see that people can do today to improve their overall sleep health? Before we get to that, like, do you see that in your own practice, like that affecting your patient's ability to recover, heal from certain diseases, like just their lacking in quality sleep?
I mean, I think that has as much, if not more, to do with day-to-day stress, not getting enough sleep, not getting quality sleep as well as they could or should. And I think a lot of that has to do with stimulants. I mean, we have stimulants all around us all day. I mean, whether it's computers that we're looking at right now or phones that we have in our hands at night or watching televisions. I mean, if you go back to nature, and I like to try to do that with most all things, is like think about what's natural. It's like, hey, the sun sets, it gets dark, we go to sleep, and it's like it's just not the way of it anymore. It's like the sun sets, we turn on the TV or we turn on our device, whether it's a phone, and we stare at blue light, and we wake our brain up, and don't really have that circadian rhythm as nature and or God intended, depending on your opinion, right? I think it's a huge piece. It's a huge piece. And I think a lot of people are starting to read on sleep hygiene. Maybe not enough people, but I think it's out there. You know what I mean? Whether it's dark out curtains or blue light filters, if for those that can't unplug at night or do their best work at night. I mean, you gotta kind of accept the cloth that you're cut from, but try to make the best of the situation that you can. I also believe that stimulants that we use during the day have a huge negative effect in the way of sleep for many people. I mean, how many people do you know that say, "Oh, I can't have a coffee past noon because I won't be able to sleep"? It's like, well, you kick your adrenals in the pants at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're probably not getting off on the best foot as far as our circadian rhythm and so on. So there are a lot of pieces of that, no doubt. And I mean, a stressed mind is not going to get the same type of sleep patterns that we would otherwise either. Those that have night terrors or just bad dreams, sleepwalking, sleep talking can testify to that, I'm sure. So setting the stage for good sleep is a big piece, but I mean, overall health and limiting as many stressors as you possibly can is going to be a component of that also. Myself, personally, I mean, I have an interesting sleep issue in that I have a mild case of narcolepsy. Really? So I have no problem sleeping. My problem is not sleeping. So I find that, what's that?
So I hear you on that one.
Right. And I'm very kind of drawn, just to stimulants during the day, whether it's coffee or otherwise. It's like, I mean, and that's the pharmacological approach is you just take amphetamines, right? Personally, I found that the dopamine support is very, very good for me. I mean, incredibly so. I mean, I was a sleepwalker, sleep talker. I would have sleep latency, nodding off while driving on the way to school and back when I was going to Central. And finding that particular component was a game changer for me. And for a lot of my patients. I mean, it's incredible how many people have excessive sleepiness during the day, sleep latency studies they would otherwise fail. And it's something that you just don't see get treated, assessed properly, I don't think. And it's super easy. I mean, just like tryptophan is good for serotonin, you take an amino acid called phenylalanine, and that just helps the body to make dopamine. And that's a game changer for a lot of my patients, a lot of them. But it has a lot to do with sleep, especially those that have dysfunctional REM patterns, whether they're sleepwalking, sleep talking, not dreaming, not remembering their dreams. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. But yeah, sleep is absolutely a crucial part. And for someone that's not sleeping or that has insomnia, I mean, the impact that has in the way of stress and anxiety on the mind and the body is hard to work around, no doubt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sleep is something, as you know, I'm still struggling with, but I just know, like, I just wonder, like, what things would be like if you get that in place. I feel like it's the glue that holds your health together, honestly. Like, it's hard to like go through and make certain decisions, whether it be your health or work or whatever, when you're feeling fatigued all day. But yeah. So another foundational pillar felt to be exercise, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I believe like we're the most sedentary culture in the world, possibly in history. And what I try to emphasize with people is more so about quality movement throughout the day. And exercise is important, but like if we're not moving, we're just sedentary all day, then we go to the gym or whatever, like we're really missing out on a lot of benefits. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think staying active throughout the day as opposed to just periodically is better. But I also believe that a lot of people have sedentary jobs, and it's kind of hard to work around that.
Yeah.
You can make up for it. I mean, if you do high volume activity, strain the body quickly, aggressively in the way of working out, then you can make a better situation out of a worser one. No doubt, like going for a 10-mile hike in the woods is going to be better than going for a 10-minute jog on a treadmill. But if we don't have the time to do so, I would never want to like dissuade anyone from doing that, especially when they don't have the time to commit to hours and hours on end. But yeah, I mean, look at city dwellers, people that walk everywhere. No doubt their health parameters are much better in doing so. But any movement is good movement, in my opinion, too. And whatever someone's most likely to do most often is what's best for them, for sure.
Yeah, I like that, because like the best form of exercise is really like the one you're actually going to do. Like all these things can sound great, but if you're not able to fit in your schedule and actually be consistent with it, then it's not really going to do you any good, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There might be the most optimal way of doing it, but doing something is infinitely better than doing nothing. So
That's right.
Go with that.
One thing, like in terms of the movement parameters, like if we think about it, like in nature, would we be able to just bench press like 350 pounds? Is that something we're designed to do? I mean, we get a lot of benefits from it for sure, but like one thing that I know we're designed to do for sure is walking. Just like getting from point A to point B. Just I feel like it's very restorative, especially for the mind and things like that. There's things out there, at least 10,000 steps a day, even though like we're thinking that's probably like the low end of things at this point. I'm just a big proponent of that, as well as strength training. You want to talk about like weight training at all? To give people some pointers on that.
I mean, when it comes to hormone production as well as cholesterol improvements, I mean, I mentioned earlier, omega-3s are really big for cholesterol. But straining your muscles is what I find to be the biggest improvement that happened. Well, the thing that you can do to improve your good cholesterol the most. When you whether you're walking all day or not, which is great for the mind, great for the body, cardiovascular health, psychological health, just general activity, moving throughout the day, whatever that movement is entailing, is huge. But for cholesterol and hormone production, straining your muscles, pushing them to a breaking point where you're sore the day afterwards, has a host of physiological improvements that occur. For one, testosterone levels rise, good cholesterol level rises. The body has to kick into growth and repair and recovery mechanisms. I often tell people, it's like you get on a treadmill and it's like once you get off, it says, hey, you burned 140 calories. There's no way to quantify if you do a circuit training session and your biceps and your quads and your calves and your core are sore for 2 days afterwards. How many calories do you burn while your body's doing the activity that made those muscles sore, but then repairing, recovering, lengthening those muscles. And now you have more tissue that is metabolically active. Like, how could you possibly quantify what that does for you? So I think you get a lot of bang for your buck out of short bursts of exercise that keep the body challenged for certain. Doing a task for 6, 7, 8 hours a day that keeps your body challenged is, I would say, probably more beneficial. But at some point, your body will wear down too if you do that. Talk to a construction worker that's 60 years old. We can only do that for so long. So in the way of exercise, it's nice because you can always curtail that to what works best for you. Avoiding areas that you may have old injuries, or focus upon things that you like doing the most. So, exercise, I think, is paramount to everyone's health picture. No doubt. It's just finding what means of exercise is going to work best for that individual. What are their goals? What do they want to gain out of the exercise, and try to meld that with what might be best for them based on their physical or personal physiological needs. But there's really no way to work around that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense. You were talking about how cholesterol is impacted by strength training. I wasn't too familiar with that. You want to go into that a little bit?
Well, HDL cholesterol tends to have a very enhancing effect when muscles are in a repair state. So when they're being torn and so on, you'll tend to see LDL cholesterol go up as well. That's the bad cholesterol. But cholesterol is, I think, misunderstood by many. It's a repair molecule. It's your body makes LDL cholesterol when you need to fix things. The HDL is what goes through and basically scrubs things clean. Grabs fat, debris, plaque, brings it back to the liver to be broken down and reclaimed. So when you exercise, there's going to be a lot of debris in the way of proteins that are getting knocked loose. When you're sore, you've ripped the muscle. So that does bring up that HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol. It'll tend to bring up the LDL cholesterol too, but it does so more at a 1-to-1 ratio, whereas typically the LDL or the bad cholesterol is higher than the HDL. So when you raise both equivalently, it still improves things overall. Most athletes have high cholesterol, meaning like above 200, but the ratios look much better for athletes in general, and that the HDL is higher because they're exercising, straining their body and so on. And it's very, very beneficial in that. Also, it's going to have a huge influence in the way of testosterone. Your body makes testosterone to help it to heal and recover, or make red blood cells, or some combination thereof. So it also helps to enhance in that area also, which leaves us being more metabolically active, more engaged, burning more calories, tend to be more awake, alert, and a whole host of things above and beyond that.
Yeah, for sure. Back to the stress component a little bit. I know like environmental toxins, such as personal care products, are like a big thing. Because I see like with some healthy oriented people, like they focus so much on the nutrition and things like that. They don't even think about what they're putting on their skin or brushing their teeth with. Like when you work with your patients, do you ever talk about like non-toxic personal care items and things like that?
Yeah, always try to. What I found to be the most dynamic resource is Environmental Work Group, or EWG. It's the group that puts out the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list every year. That's got a lot of popularity, but they do have a link. It's Skin Deep, EWG Skin Deep, and that's where you can look at different metrics in the way of cosmetic, hair, skin, nail, deodorant, toothpaste type products, and they rank them year by year because the products are always changing. What's being added to them is always changing. So it's hard to stay on top of them and say, oh, this brand's always good, because if a different company buys that brand out, then that's not necessarily the way of it in a few years. So that's a great resource. And they go through and explain why they give their certain criteria, their certain ratings for each product, whether it's carcinogens or animal cruelty concerns or otherwise. So that's a really, really good means, I would say, to focus upon. To your point, I mean, a lot of people don't understand that the FDA doesn't quite protect us as much as you'd hope, you know. And I mean, it seems like if something it can't be proven to be bad for us, then it's okay, you know. I mean,
Right. It's like it's the opposite. Like we assume everything is safe until proven not, but it really should be the opposite for all these chemicals. Like it should be like suspect until proven not, right?
Yeah. And the problem is the criteria for proving causation is so high. You know, I mean, it's like, and oftentimes it's 20, 30 years down the road before a chronic stressor manifests in the way of a particular ailment. But I mean, if you look at, like, I mean, think about wheat and Roundup, glyphosate. It's like, if you spray it in your backyard in the full force, right, it causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or you can join a class action lawsuit. They're beating on people's doors trying to get them to do that because they were able to prove a causation. But if you spray it on our mass crops, then it's okay still. Like
Yeah.
that's not okay. Like, and how is it that doesn't get brought to legislation? I mean, like, they've already proven it. It will cause cancer if you're spraying it straight from a bottle. But
Yeah.
we spray
Monsanto
it.
doesn't want us to dip into their profits. That's why.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? You know, and I mean, you go to other countries, it's like they come up with different answers. They don't allow genetic modifications of large crops like that. And go figure, people feel way different. You know, I mean, you talk to people anecdotally that go over to Europe and have wheat and they're perfectly fine, and they come here and they feel terrible again. It's scary. It really is what in the U.S. in particular, I think, allows to be done to our food sources. Yeah, it shouldn't. It's not a chemistry experiment, you know. And
Right.
people get laughed at for not eating wheat, and it's like, what we're eating now isn't what people were eating 30 years ago. It didn't
Right.
exist, you know. I
Even
mean,
with the wheat varieties, like the wheat that we're eating today is different from thousands of years ago. Now we got like the dwarf wheat.
not even thousands, hundreds. I mean, if you just look at
Hundreds,
how
yeah.
European hybridization goes compared to U.S., I mean, you just amplify a crop. And I mean, natural selection is going to cause things to evolve, but the rate at which we've accelerated that is too great for the rate at which our immune system tolerates those protein deviations, those changes. That's why so many people react poorly to it. And it's not everyone. I guess that's the problem, right? How do you prove causation? Like, hey, 7 people that I know can eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day and they're fine, but there's that one person that stands out, and it's like, what number is enough? You know, at what
Yeah.
point is the crop been bastardized enough for it to be no longer allowed to be? And I don't know where that point is. Apparently not far enough yet.
For sure. Yeah. So you talked about the environmental working group in terms of go-to source or environmental toxins and things like that. Of course, pesticides. And matter of fact, want to talk about a little bit. Let's talk about pesticides and like because we hear all the time like organic, but why? Like why is it important to avoid those things and just focus on real food that we've been eating since the dawn of time, really.
So, I mean, some crops are going to be sprayed with pesticides more than others. Just depends on where they're at. Are they vulnerable? Are they growing in large batches? I mean, in general, when you do mono agriculture, like driving down the expressway and you see nothing but corn and nothing but soybeans, it's like if one pest comes through there, it'll ransack it because it's an endless buffet. So when we do that type of farming, you have to have pesticides, or else your entire yield is completely a crapshoot as to whether or not it's going to make it. And I mean, these huge farming conglomerates have large contracts to provide millions of pounds of crops, whatever that crop may be. So they have to have a foolproof method of doing so. So that's why Roundup and pesticides and so on have become so prevalent. You can much more profitably do smaller farming conglomerates. You can have cycling in the way of how we transition fields and so on, and make a lot more money per yard or per acre. But it's not as, you're not gonna be able to make as much bottom line because you won't have huge contracts that these huge corn and soy bean conglomerates will have. So it does seem like it's starting to come full circle where a lot of smaller farming operations are coming through, and it's great because they can sell at a lower price point and make more money. They don't have to sell things as cheaply because they're making more money per acre of land. So I'm hoping that continues. It seems like it's starting to, and several groups now that are kind of going around where basically it's like a crop share. Everyone like, all right, I'll be growing corn, you get the tomatoes, and everyone just kind of circulates what they have abundances of. So it's kind of neat that we're seeing things like that come about. I hope it continues for sure, but being the masses, I guess, is going to be something that's going to be a problem. And so far, our fix is spray pesticides on things and have a greater yield volume wise.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to see like the regenerative agriculture becoming more prominent, because it's not just enough to like be organic in terms of like farming and things like that. Like we actually need to add things back to the environment and the soil, the way things are going. Like, because organic, we know that like there's so many loopholes, and a lot of times there's pesticides that are illegal that you can spray on organic crops, which is why I like to point to like the certification called biodynamic. You know about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that doesn't really leave any wiggle room for any of the nonsense. So I really, I just don't see it much. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah. Unless you're doing it yourself, right? I mean, it's almost kind of the way you got to do it.
Yeah.
But that the whole idea of like rotational crops affords that. I mean, it's like using kind of the circle of life. Growing rye, have the cows come through and eat the rye, and then the chickens clean up after the cows, and now you fertilize your soil, and it's stronger soil that's going to be able to bear a stronger crop that can fight for itself. I mean, the problem that we have in more industrial farming practices is the soil gets ripped dry of all of its minerals. You can add nitrates and phosphates to fertilize and grow the plant, but if the minerals aren't there, the plant is not nearly as able to protect itself, nor is it as healthy for us as it would have been otherwise. So I say those smaller farming practices are going to be definitely a better means of having a healthier, more sustainable crop. We just need a lot of hands on deck for that. I mean, it takes a lot of tenureship, and it's not just a one-trick pony. I don't think. I mean, there are those that are out there that are teaching the practice, but it's going to take a lot of people who want to work really hard, and that gets to be a problem unto itself. But yeah, it can be done. It definitely can be done, and it seems like there is a trend in that direction. So I would just hope it continues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this has been great. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about nutrition. We talked about functional medicine. Some things to basically watch out for in terms of conventional medicine. We know that has its place, but we really want to be able to have the tools to take control of our own health, environmental toxins, and things like that. That all being said, what would you say is holding people back from claiming their own health? Like, if the power is within them, like, what are the blocks? Of course, it's going to be based on the individual, but like, what do we need to do to take back our own minds and our own bodies to achieve optimal wellness?
There's no simple answer there, right? I think a lot of people really don't know what to eat. I mean, based on what you're growing up, what you grow up being fed, you tend to think that's the way that you eat, and very few people are really doing what they need to do there. I think getting back to the basics is probably the biggest thing slowing people down. Thinking of just whole food, the way of eating that we're supposed to eat. I mean, that's been so bastardized for the sake of convenience. And I guess maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer, is convenience.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
life
like
has gotten so simple that it's like the thought of, oh, I have to go shopping and make food. Like, that seems like such an inconvenience. And again, if you go back to nature, it's like every other thing on this planet spends its entire existence trying to sustain itself with food all day, every day, looking for food. And we are just like blown away at the fact that we have to go shopping 3, 4 times a week and cook food for ourselves. It just seems like, really, I don't have the time to do that in life. And it's like, you shouldn't have the time to do anything else. I mean, like that's such a huge piece. So, I mean, getting back to the basics is huge, and staying at, I mean, yeah, convenience. I think life has gotten too convenient for a lot of people. Not challenging. I feel like when we don't energetically expend enough energy, our mind expends it for us, whether we want to or not. I think that has
yeah,
a lot to do with a lot of people's anxiety and insomnia and so on. It's like our bodies are designed to be used, and if we don't do it, it's like your brain burns up over 30% of your calories. So if you're not challenging the body to use those calories, then the brain will use more. And it can burn that midnight oil if we're not exhausting our body and giving the body and the mind a need to repair, recover at nighttime. I think that's a big piece of it. I mean, I don't know many people that have worked really, really hard all day long and can't sleep at night. It's a difficult undertaking to do both of those. Not to say it doesn't ever happen. I'm sure, I know it does, but in general, I think if we're staying physically engaged, we're going to sleep better. We're going to have less stress, less anxiety, because your body has more physical things, real things to worry about.
yeah, that's a good answer. Like what I heard you say, it's basically taking the actions that are necessary because there's a lot of like distractions and conveniences. Like we're kind of disconnected from what's real in a sense, and we need to kind of get back to things just one step at a time. It doesn't have to be overnight. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just take steps in the right direction and we'll eventually get there. Our goals are achievable. Our body is designed to heal itself, and it's a journey, but it's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Appreciate this a lot, Dr. Simmons. I know people are getting a lot of value out of this. And if people want to know more about you and integrative wellness, um, functional medicine, things like that, like where can they go to find out more?
IW centers Integrative Wellness Centers is where I work. So we have a couple different means of reaching out. The phone number is easy enough, 734-779-1650. We do have a wealth of resources Dr. Shields has put out as well in the way of videos and so on that are at the website, which is iwc.com. iwcenters.com. So both would be great ways to look into us if anyone had any further interest in the office.
All right. I'll be sure to link that up in the notes as well. All right. And once again, it's been an honor. Appreciate it.